I've seen trees split by lightning 1,000 times in these Appalachian Mountains. 23 years as a ranger on the Blackburn Ridge Trail will teach you what nature can and cannot do. Wood splinters. It chars. It cracks along the grain, following the path of least resistance like water finding its way downhill. But wood doesn't burn in geometric patterns. It doesn't burn in dates, and it definitely doesn't burn your own name into the trunk. The hemlock stood where the trail forked toward Dead Woman's Hollow, a name the tourists think is quaint until they learned about Emily Chen. I found the tree on a routine patrol, 3 miles from the nearest campsite, the bark blackened in a way that made my throat close up. I'd been checking on illegal campers reported near the old fire tower, taking the long route through the hardwood forest where the maples were just starting to turn. October in the Appalachians is different than anywhere else. The mountains breathe differently this time of year, exhaling the summer's warmth in cold morning mists that cling to the valleys like something alive. The tourists come in droves for the fall colors, clogging the parking lots with their SUVs and their expensive hiking boots that have never seen a real trail. They take their photos, post them online, and leave without ever understanding that these mountains are older than their concept of time, that the Cherokee who lived here first had stories about the peaks and hollows that made even the bravest warriors walk carefully after dark. I'd been thinking about Emily Chen that morning. I always do when I pass the fork. Her face still looks out from missing posters in the ranger station, faded now, the paper yellowed with age, but her smile still bright. 8 years old, gap-toothed, holding a butterfly on her finger. They'd been camping, her and her parents, just a weekend trip to see the leaves. She'd wandered off while her father was setting up the tent, just vanished like the mountain had swallowed her whole. That was 30 years ago, almost to the day. The search had gone on for weeks. Hundreds of volunteers combing every inch of Blackburn Ridge. Dogs, helicopters, even psychics, desperate to help. They found her tent, abandoned, her parents' belongings untouched. But inside, Emily had done something that still makes my skin crawl when I think about it. She'd carved symbols everywhere, into the tent fabric with her fingernails until they'd torn and bled, into the sleeping bags, into the cooler, the camp stove, even into her own father's hiking boots. Geometric patterns that the investigators photographed and studied and could never explain. Sharp angles and spirals and shapes that seemed to shift when you looked at them too long, like optical illusions that your brain couldn't quite process. The last thing she'd carved in the dirt outside the tent was a date. 10/23/1994. The day after she disappeared. They never found her body. The case went cold. Her parents divorced 2 years later, destroyed by grief and unanswered questions. And the symbols in that tent became local legend, proof, some said, that something in these mountains was older and stranger than any of us wanted to admit. I'd joined the Ranger Service because of Emily Chen. 17 years old, watching the news coverage, seeing her mother's face crumble during yet another press conference where they had nothing new to report. I'd promised myself I'd learn these trails so well that no one would ever get lost on my watch again. 23 years later, I knew every mile of Blackburn Ridge, every switchback, every water source, every place where the trail got narrow and the drop-offs could kill you if you weren't careful. I knew where the black bears denned in winter and where the copperheads sunned themselves on the rocks in summer. I knew these mountains the way a sailor knows the sea, with respect, with caution, and with the absolute certainty that they could kill me anytime they wanted. But I'd never seen anything like the hemlock. The symbols covered 8 feet of trunk, maybe more. Precise, deliberate. burned into the bark with such heat that the wood beneath had crystallized, turning to something that looked more like black glass than charred timber. The patterns hurt to look at, not physically, but in some deeper way, like staring at them too long would let something stare back. And there, among the spirals and angles that made my eyes water, Derek Holland, 11.17.2024. That's my name. Today's date. My hand moved to my radio automatically, 23 years of training taking over while my conscious mind was still trying to process what I was seeing. The radio crackled with static, though I was well within range of the nearest repeater. I keyed it twice. Nothing but that static. And underneath it, was that counting? A whispered rhythm like someone tallying numbers under their breath. I released the key. The forest had gone quiet in that way that makes your hindbrain scream, the way every animal knows means predator. No birds, no wind, no skittering of squirrels through dead leaves. Even the insects had stopped their chirping. Just my breathing, harsh and quick in the sudden silence, and the smell of old smoke that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. 3 bars of service, good coverage for this deep in the forest. I took photo after photo, making sure to capture every angle, every detail. The symbols seemed to move in my peripheral vision, but when I looked directly at them, they were still, just burned wood, just a pattern that shouldn't exist. I zoomed in on one section, and that's when I saw the smaller marks beneath my name. Numbers, coordinates, I realized, my pulse quickening. And beneath those, another date burned into the wood. 08.15.914. The day Emily Chen disappeared. The same geometric script, the same impossible precision. After 30 years, here it was again, and this time it had my name attached to it. I should have left. I should have marked the location, hiked back to the station, and brought in a team. That's protocol. That's what 23 years of experience demanded. But the symbols were warm. I know that sounds insane, but I had to check. I pulled off my glove and pressed my palm against the blackened bark, and the wood was warm like heated wax, like whatever had burned these marks had just finished its work. The heat spread up my arm, not painful but present, and for just a second I could have sworn I felt something. A pulse maybe, or a vibration too low to hear but deep enough to feel in my bones. I jerked my hand back. The symbols seemed darker now, deeper, as if my touch had made them more real somehow. The coordinates. I needed to check the coordinates. My hands were already pulling up the mapping app before my brain caught up. Fingers clumsy with adrenaline and something else. A compulsion I couldn't quite name, like the tree itself was urging me to understand, to see, to know. The coordinates pointed to a location off-trail, deep in a section we call the Narrows, a quarter-mile ravine where the ridge pinches tight and the canopy grows so dense that noon looks like dusk. It's not technically closed to hikers, but we don't encourage people to go there. The terrain is treacherous, all loose shale and drop-offs hidden by mountain laurel, and the GPS signal gets spotty where the ravine walls rise up on either side. I marked the location on my phone. 2 miles northeast of my current position, maybe an hour of bushwhacking through terrain that would tear up anyone who wasn't experienced. I knew I should call it in. I knew I should wait for backup. But the symbols were fresh, still warm under my palm, and if there was even a chance that Emily Chen could finally go home, that her parents could have closure after 30 years of not knowing, I started walking. The forest changed as I moved off trail. That sounds dramatic, but it's true. The tourist-friendly hardwoods gave way to older growth, massive hemlocks and white oaks that had been here since before the first Europeans arrived. The undergrowth grew thicker, mountain laurel forming walls of twisted branches that grabbed at my uniform and pack. I had to use my compass more than GPS. The signal kept cutting in and out, bars dropping away and coming back in a rhythm that seemed almost deliberate. The counting sound from the radio had stopped, but now I could hear it in the wind. Or maybe I was imagining it. Soft numbers, whispered in a voice that might have been a child's. 17, 18, 19. I pushed through a particularly dense thicket of laurel and stopped dead. The trees had marks on them. Not the geometric burns from the hemlock, but older scars. Crude tallies carved onto bark that had since tried to heal over them. Someone had carved a vertical line into an oak, deep enough that the tree had wept sap and scarred around it. Then another line beside it, and another. 5 tallies in a group, then a diagonal slash through them, then 5 more tallies starting fresh. Counting marks. I moved to the next tree. More tallies, and the next, and the next. They covered every tree within sight, stretching back into the forest in both directions like a trail of breadcrumbs, or a warning. I took photos, my unease growing with each click of the camera. These marks were old, decades old, judging by how the bark had tried to heal. But they'd been made deliberately, methodically, by someone who'd spent hours out here marking every tree they could reach. What were they counting? My GPS came back online long enough to show I was getting close to the coordinates. Another half mile. The terrain had started to slope downward, and I could hear water somewhere below. Probably Blackburn Creek, which ran through the bottom of the Narrows before disappearing into a cave system that cavers had spent years trying to fully map. The tallies grew more frequent. On some trees, the marks had been carved over multiple times, as if someone had returned again and again to update their work. I stopped at one oak where someone had carved so many tallies that they'd practically ringed the entire trunk. I tried to count them, got to 200, and gave up. 200 of what? The whispered counting was louder now. Definitely not my imagination. It seemed to come from the trees themselves, vibrating through the wood. 43, 44, 45. I keyed my radio again. Dispatch, this is Holland. Radio check? Static. Then, copy Holland. What's your 20? The dispatcher's voice sounded strange, distant. I gave her my approximate coordinates. Copy that. Everything okay out there? Yeah, just checking in. Going to be off trail for a bit longer. Found something that might be related to the Chen case. A pause, long enough that I thought I'd lost the signal. Then, the Chen case? Derek, that was 30 years ago. I know, but there's something out here. Coordinates burned into a tree. I'm going to check it out. Another pause. You want backup? I looked at the marked trees, at the darkening forest ahead. Yeah, send someone to the dead woman's hollow fork. I'll mark a trail from there. Copy. I'll radio Pete. He's up near the fire tower, probably 45 minutes out. That's fine. Holland out. I clipped the radio back on my belt and kept moving. The slope grew steeper, the ground more treacherous. I had to use roots and saplings to keep from sliding on the loose leaf litter. The canopy had closed in overhead, turning afternoon into twilight, and the temperature had dropped noticeably. My breath misted in front of me. The counting had stopped. The forest was silent again, that predator silence that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Then, I saw the sinkhole. It opened in the forest floor like a wound, maybe 20 feet across, its edges crumbling into darkness. The kind of geological feature that happens when underground streams erode the limestone beneath, creating voids that eventually collapse. The Appalachians are riddled with them, sinkholes and caves and underground rivers that connect in ways even the scientists don't fully understand. I approached carefully, testing each step before putting my weight down. The edges were unstable, held together by tree roots that had grown into a lattice trying to hold the ground together. I clicked on my flashlight and swept the beam across the opening. The light caught something 10 feet down, partially buried in leaf litter and soil that had collapsed into the hole. A small sneaker, pink, rotted, the laces still tied. My heart stopped. I zoomed in with my phone camera, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. There, barely visible beneath the shoe, a fragment of fabric, and further down, where the darkness swallowed the light, something pale that might have been bone. Oh, Emily. I backed away from the edge, fumbling for my radio. This time, I didn't care about the static or the strange sounds underneath. Dispatch, this is Holland. I need recovery at the Narrows. Possible remains related to the Chen case. I need the sheriff, medical examiner, and a technical rescue team. The static came back, and underneath the dispatcher's voice, I heard it again, that whispered counting, clearer now. 61, 62, 63. Copy that, Derek. Repeat, possible remains? Yes, child-sized clothing and possible bones. I'm marking the location now. Jesus. Okay, Sheriff's Department is notified. Teams en route. Estimated arrival 90 minutes. Can you secure the scene? 90 minutes alone in this place. I swept my flashlight across the ravine, and that's when I saw the oak tree. It clung to the sinkhole's edge like it was trying to hold the ground together, its roots exposed and wrapped around chunks of limestone like arthritic fingers. The trunk was massive, maybe 4 feet across, old enough to have been here when Emily Chen disappeared. And burned into that trunk, covering it from root to crown, were more symbols. I moved closer, my light revealing pattern after pattern of that same geometric script. But these were different, larger, more elaborate, and among them, carved into the wood with such precision they looked printed rather than burned. Laura Peterson, 03-22-2025. James Kim, 03-22-2025. Rachel Holland, 03-22-2025. Stephen Mitchell, 03-22-2025. Diana Flores, 03-22-2025. I counted 12 names total, all with the same date, March 22nd, 2025, tomorrow. And the third name down, the one that made my vision blur and my knees go weak, Rachel, my daughter, my only child. I grabbed the tree trunk for support, and the moment my hand touched the bark, the forest exhaled.
That's the only way I can describe it. A collective sigh from every tree, every branch, every root system connected through the soil. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds, from autumn cool to winter cold. My breath came out in thick clouds. Frost spread across the exposed roots, crystallizing in patterns that matched the symbols on the trunk. And the oak tree's branches began to move. Not swaying in wind, moving. The limbs bent and twisted with purpose, interweaving with each other and with the branches of neighboring trees, creating a lattice that blocked my path back up the ravine. I watched, frozen in horror and disbelief as the forest rearranged itself. The whispered counting swelled to a chorus, coming from all around me. 87, 88, 89. I spun, looking for another root. Behind me, mountain laurel bushes shifted, their roots breaking through soil with wet tearing sounds. In the fading light, I could see the entire ravine responding, vegetation moving with the patience of something that had waited 30 years and could wait 30 more. But I couldn't. Laura Peterson was the elementary school principal in Blackburn Township. James Kim ran the fire department. Stephen Mitchell was the mayor. These weren't random names.
These were the people who kept our small mountain community functioning. Their deaths would be devastating. And Rachel, God, Rachel, she'd called last week to tell me she'd be visiting for the first time in 2 years, driving up from Charlotte to spend the weekend. We'd had a falling out after her mother died. Something stupid about the funeral arrangements that had spiraled into years of hurt feelings and stubborn silence. But she'd called. She'd wanted to reconnect. She was supposed to arrive tomorrow afternoon, March 22nd. The tree wasn't predicting tragedy. It was announcing it, counting down to it, and somehow, impossibly, it wanted me here to witness. I ran, not up toward the trail. The branches had made that impossible, but parallel to the ravine, looking for any break in the vegetation, any path that would take me away from this place. The flashlight beam bounced wildly as I crashed through undergrowth, thorns tearing at my face and hands. Behind me, I could hear the forest moving. Not fast, but inevitable, like watching storm clouds roll in. The creaking of wood, the snap of roots, the whisper of leaves that sounded too much like words. Witness, witness, witness. A hemlock branch caught my shoulder, not swaying in my path, but actively reaching, grabbing. The impact spun me around and I went down hard, the flashlight spinning away into the leaves. In the sudden darkness, I heard it clearly, that whispered counting, but closer now, all around me, coming from the trees themselves. I crawled toward where I'd seen the light fall, hands scrabbling through dead leaves and loose soil. My fingers closed around the flashlight and I swung the beam up and froze. 10 feet away, carved into the ravine wall itself, was a single word in that same geometric script. The letters were 10 feet tall, cut so deep into the rock face that they probably went back several feet. This wasn't done recently. This had been here years, decades, maybe longer. Witness. My radio crackled to life, loud in the silence. "Holland, this is dispatch. Pete's about 20 minutes out from the Hollow Fork. You copy?" I grabbed the radio with shaking hands. "Copy. Tell him to bring cutting tools. The forest is... the trail's blocked." "Blocked? By what?" "How can I explain? Fallen trees, storm damage. Just tell him to be careful." "Copy that. Derek, are you okay? You sound..." "I'm fine. Just get him here." Holland out. I wasn't fine. I was 3 miles from the nearest trail, watching a forest rearrange itself, staring at a word carved into stone that shouldn't exist, with my daughter's name burned on a tree trunk alongside a date that was tomorrow. The tree didn't want to hurt me. I understood that now with crystalline clarity. The oracle, that's what Emily Chen had called it in her drawings, the ones the investigators had found scattered around her tent. Crude pictures of a massive tree with symbols carved into its trunk, with a child standing before it, hands pressed to the bark. She titled the drawing, "The Oracle Shows What Will Be." They'd thought it was just a child's imagination, evidence of the confused mental state she must have been in before she wandered off and died. But Emily had seen this. She'd found the tree, or the tree had found her. It had shown her something, burned its visions into her mind the way it burned symbols into bark, and she tried to warn people the only way she knew how, carving frantically into every surface she could reach, trying to get the message out before... Before what? Before the tree took her? Before whatever was supposed to happen on October 23rd, 1994? I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and searched news archives. October 23rd, 1994. Blackburn Township. The results loaded slowly. Then, I saw it. Near tragedy averted at Blackburn Elementary. A gas main rupture, detected the morning of October 23rd, just hours before school was supposed to start. The building evacuated, repairs made. If it had gone undetected, if the spark from any light switch or heating system had ignited the gas, Emily had saved them. An anonymous tip, the article said, had led inspectors to check the main.
but Emily had disappeared on the 22nd. Unless she hadn't. Unless she'd made it out of these woods somehow, called in the warning, and then... I looked at the sinkhole and the small pink shoe. And then she'd come back. Because the Oracle demanded its witness.
My mind raced through possibilities, each more impossible than the last. The Oracle showed Emily what would happen, a gas explosion that would kill dozens of children. She tried to warn people with her carvings, but no one understood. So she'd escaped the forest, called in an anonymous tip that saved the school, and then the tree had called her back, pulled her back, because the bargain wasn't complete. The Oracle didn't just want someone to see the future, it wanted someone to witness it, to be there when the knowledge bore fruit. And if you tried to change what it showed you, if you tried to save people, it wanted payment. My hand moved to the radio, then stopped. What would I say? That I'd found Emily Chen's body and also a magic tree that predicts the future and wants me to watch people die? They'd pull me off this mountain for psychological evaluation. But I had evidence, photos of the symbols, the names, the dates. I pulled up my phone's gallery, scrolling through the images I'd taken of the hemlock at the trail fork, of the oak tree beside the sinkhole. The photos were blank, not corrupted, blank. Just images of normal trees, bark unmarked, no symbols visible at all. I scrolled frantically through every picture. They'd all been replaced with ordinary forest shots, as if I'd been photographing nothing unusual at all. No, 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 no. I ran back to the oak tree, flashlight beam catching those burned names. I held up my phone and took another photo. Watched as the image appeared on screen, showing exactly what I was seeing, the symbols, the names, all of it. Then, as I watched, the names faded from the photo, like disappearing ink. Within seconds, I was looking at a picture of a normal tree trunk. The Oracle didn't want evidence, it only wanted witnesses. I looked at the names burned into the oak tree. 12 people, good people, people who kept Blackburn Township running, who had families and dreams and years left to live. And Rachel, God, Rachel, who I'd barely spoken to in 2 years, who I'd let my grief and stubbornness drive away, who was coming tomorrow to give me a second chance I didn't deserve. March 22nd. Tomorrow. What was supposed to happen tomorrow? I pulled out my phone again, searching local news, event calendars, anything that might connect 12 specific people to a single date. The signal was weak but functional, pages loading in fits and starts. There, Blackburn Township Annual Spring Festival Planning Meeting, March 22nd, 7 p.m. at the Community Center. All town leadership required to attend. I scrolled through the planning committee. Laura Peterson, James Kim, Stephen Mitchell, all the names from the tree were on the list. The festival was a big deal for our little town, drew tourists from across the state. Everyone who was anyone in local government would be at that meeting. But why was Rachel's name there? She didn't live here anymore, hadn't for years. I called her number. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Rachel, it's Dad. Listen, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I need you to not come up tomorrow. I need you to stay in Charlotte. Something's not right. Just call me back, okay? Please. I hung up and immediately tried again. Voicemail again. I sent a text, then another, each message more desperate than the last. The forest had gone quiet again. The branches had stopped moving. In the distance, I could hear voices. The rescue team arriving, probably Pete and whoever else dispatch had called in. They'd follow my marked trail from the fork, be here in 20 minutes, maybe less. And then what? I'd show them Emily's remains, let them process the scene, and somehow convince them that there was going to be a tragedy tomorrow night at the community center? Based on what? Symbols I couldn't photograph on a tree that showed normal bark to everyone but me? The counting had started again, so soft I almost couldn't hear it. 137, 138, 139. I looked at the word carved into the ravine wall.
Witness. That's what it wanted, what it always wanted. Not prevention, not salvation, just someone to see, to know, to carry the weight of unavoidable knowledge. But Emily changed things. She'd saved those children despite what the Oracle wanted, and the Oracle had taken her in return. I pulled out my knife, a sturdy fixed blade I'd carried for 23 years, sharp enough to cut through rope or carve blazes into trees when I needed to mark a trail. The blade gleamed in the flashlight beam. I rolled up my sleeve and pressed the point against my forearm, and before I could think too hard about what I was doing, I carved no. The pain was immediate and shocking, blood welling up in the shallow cut. I kept going, carving faster now, rough letters that would scar. 03/22/2025, Community Center, gas leak. The forest shuddered. That's the only word for it. Every tree, every root, every branch shook simultaneously, and the temperature dropped so fast that the blood on my arm started to freeze before it could drip. My breath came in gasps that crystallized instantly. The whispered counting swelled to a roar, hundreds of voices, thousands, all counting in unison, numbers overlapping and echoing until I couldn't tell where one ended and another began. 241, 242, 243. The oak tree's branches withdrew, slowly, reluctantly. The mountain laurel stopped shifting. The roots that had torn through the soil stayed still. And in the sudden silence that followed, I heard something that made my blood run colder than any supernatural forest could. Laughter. Not human laughter, not quite. Something older, stranger, coming from deep in the earth beneath the sinkhole. A sound like rocks grinding together, like water eroding stone, like time itself finding humor in the struggles of something as brief and fragile as a human life. Then it stopped. The forest was just a forest again, dark, cold, but normal. Above me, I could see flashlight beams cutting through the trees. Pete's voice called out, "Derek, are you down there?" "Yeah, I'm here, Pete. I found her. Emily Chen."
The next 6 hours blurred together. The rescue team descended into the ravine with proper safety equipment, established a perimeter, called in the sheriff's department and the medical examiner. They recovered what was left of Emily Chen carefully, reverently. 30 years of questions finally getting answers. I sat wrapped in an emergency blanket while a paramedic cleaned and bandaged the cuts on my arm. Pete asked me about them, and I lied, said I'd fallen, caught myself on a sharp rock. He gave me a look that said he didn't quite believe me, but wasn't going to push it right now. The medical examiner, Dr. Barbara Cohen, picked her way over to where I sat. She was in her 50s, had been doing this job longer than I'd been a ranger. Her face was professionally neutral, but I could see the tension around her eyes. "Derek," she said quietly, this is going to give a lot of people closure. Her parents deserve to know, to bury their daughter properly." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "The remains are consistent with a fall into the sinkhole. We'll need to do a full examination, but preliminarily it looks like she wandered off, fell in, and, well, we'll know more once we can examine her properly." "Yeah," the word came out rough. "That makes sense." It didn't, though. The pink shoe had been near the surface, placed carefully, not tumbled or disturbed. Emily hadn't fallen. She'd been placed there, or had gone willingly, after making her phone call to save those children at the school. But I couldn't say that. Couldn't explain that I knew the truth because a tree had shown me, with symbols that didn't appear in photographs. Dr. Cohen squeezed my shoulder and moved back to her team. Pete sat down beside me, his own face drawn with exhaustion. "Hell of a thing, finding her after all this time." "Yeah." "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I almost laughed at that. If only it were that simple. Just tired. Long day. You should head back. Let us finish processing the scene. Get some rest. I nodded, but I didn't move. Couldn't. Because 30 feet away, the oak tree stood beside the sinkhole, and I could still see the names burned into its bark, even though I knew no one else could. Tomorrow's date. 12 people. My daughter. Pete, I said slowly. The community center. You guys checked the gas lines recently? The community center? Why? I thought I smelled something funny when I was up there last week. Might be worth having someone take a look before the planning meeting tomorrow. The spring festival meeting? Derek, that's not until... He stopped, looking at me more carefully. You really think there's a gas leak? I don't know, maybe I'm being paranoid, but it wouldn't hurt to check, right? Better safe than sorry. Pete pulled out his phone, typed a quick message. I'll have James swing by first thing in the morning. He's fire chief, he'll know what to look for. James Kim, whose name was on the tree, who would be at that meeting tomorrow night. Make sure he checks tonight before the meeting, please. Something in my voice made Pete look at me hard. Derek, what's going on? Just a feeling, a bad feeling. Humor me? He studied me for another moment, then nodded. Okay, I'll call him myself. Make sure it gets done tonight. He stood, brushing leaves off his pants. You sure you're okay? Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Pete. He walked back toward the recovery team, already pulling out his phone. I sat in my emergency blanket, shivering despite the insulation, and stared at the oak tree. The names were still there, still burned into the bark with that impossible precision, but they seemed less vivid now, the letters not quite as dark, as if my interference had already started to change things. Or maybe the oracle was just adjusting its plans. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I sat in my small ranger cabin with every light on, my bandaged arm throbbing, watching my phone for messages from Rachel that never came. I called her 6 more times, all voicemail, sent a dozen texts that went unanswered. At 6 a.m., my phone finally rang. Pete. Derek, you were right. James found a cracked main at the community center. Gas company's out there now. It's bad. If it had made it until tonight, with all those people in the building... My hand tightened on the phone. Is James okay? Yeah, he's fine. Shaken up, but fine. Said the leak was worse than anything he's seen in 20 years. One spark and the whole building would have gone up. You saved a lot of lives last night, Derek. I closed my eyes. Good. That's good. How did you know? You didn't actually smell anything last week, did you? No, I didn't. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm not going to ask, but Derek, get some rest. You look like hell, and after yesterday, just take care of yourself, okay? Yeah, I will. I hung up and walked to the window. Dawn was breaking over Blackburn Ridge, painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere out there, the oak tree stood beside a sinkhole, and the hemlock still marked the fork toward Dead Woman's Hollow. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Dad, sorry for not answering. Was in a work meeting that ran late and then lost signal. What's wrong? You okay? I typed with shaking fingers. I'm fine. Just wanted to hear your voice. You still coming up today? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Actually, about that, my car is making a weird noise, and I don't want to risk the mountain roads. Can we reschedule for next weekend? I sat down heavily on the bed. She wasn't coming. She was safe. All of them were safe. James Kim had found the leak before the meeting, before anyone could get hurt. I'd changed it, carved a warning into my own flesh, and changed what the oracle had shown me. Another text appeared. Dad, you there? Yeah, next weekend sounds great.
I love you. Love you too. Get some rest. Pete told me about you finding Emily Chen. That must have been really hard. It was, but her parents can finally have closure. That matters. It does. I'm proud of you. See you next weekend. I set the phone down and rolled up my sleeve. The bandage was spotted with blood, the cuts underneath throbbing. I carefully peeled it back. The letters I'd carved were healing wrong. The shallow cuts were already scabbing over, but the scabs were dark, like burned wood, and the letters seemed deeper than they should be, as if something was carving them from the inside. I rewrapped the bandage quickly, hands trembling. The oracle wasn't finished with me. I had saved them, yes, changed what the oracle had shown me, just like Emily had changed the future 30 years ago. But Emily paid a price for her interference, and now the forest knew I would do it again.
Hello, friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Now, let's get started.
There's a radio frequency that only works at night. 155.7 megahertz. After midnight. If you're listening on our royal, you hear voices. People describing their own deaths. Giving their names. Giving their dates. Giving detailed, calm narrations of their last moments before dying in the park. Hypothermia. Falls. Murders. Drownings. All delivered in emotionless, synthetic voices. All matching real missing persons cases. All broadcasting from somewhere on the island. My name is Jeff Carmody. I'm a night dispatcher. And for 3 months, I've been listening to the dead. And last week, I heard someone who isn't dead yet. Someone describing their death in present tense. Someone I might still be able to save. If I can find where the signal is coming from. If I can trace the broadcast. If I can reach them before the voice becomes past tense. Before I am dying becomes I died. Before the frequency claims another victim. Isle Royale National Park is closed from November to April. Winter makes the island inaccessible. Lake Superior freezes. Supply boats stop running. Visitors evacuate. The island empties. Only essential staff remain. Park service personnel. Maintenance workers. Research scientists. Maybe 30 people total across 206 square miles of Wilderness Island. I'm night dispatcher. 12-hour shifts. 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. Monitoring radio frequencies. Answering emergency calls. Coordinating the minimal operations that continue through winter. It's isolated work. Quiet work. Lonely work. Perfect for someone who doesn't like people. Who prefers machines. Who finds comfort in radio static and frequency modulation and the precise technical specifications of communication systems. I've been doing this job for 3 years. Every winter. Same routine. Same frequencies. Same empty hours filled with nothing but equipment hum and occasional check-in calls from the handful of people scattered across the frozen island. But this winter, something changed. This winter, I found the frequency. 155.7 megahertz. A channel that shouldn't exist. That isn't assigned to any agency. That doesn't appear in any FCC database. That broadcasts nothing during the day. That comes alive only after midnight. That carries voices describing death. I discovered it by accident. December 3rd. Just after midnight. I was doing routine frequency sweeps. Checking all assigned channels. Making sure equipment was functioning. Making sure no one needed assistance. Standard protocol. Boring work. Mind-numbing repetition. Then I hit 155.7 megahertz. And heard a voice. Male. Middle-aged. Calm. speaking in measured, emotionless tones, like text-to-speech software, like computer-generated narration, but the content was anything but automated. My name is Richard Kovacs. I disappeared from Isle Royale National Park on August 17, 2019. I was hiking the Greenstone Ridge Trail. I left the trail at mile marker 23 to photograph a moose. I slipped on wet rock, fell into a ravine, broke my left femur, compound fracture, bone through skin. I couldn't climb out, couldn't walk, couldn't reach my radio. I called for help for 6 hours. No one heard. I applied tourniquet using my belt. Slowed bleeding, but shock set in. Hypothermia followed. Temperature dropped to 38 degrees that night. I lost consciousness around 4 a.m. I died approximately 6:30 a.m. August 18th. My body was found September 2nd by a trail crew. Cause of death, exsanguination and hypothermia. This is my voice. This is my story. This is how I died on Isle Royale. Then silence. 5 seconds. Then another voice. Female. Younger. My name is Amanda Paulson. I disappeared from Isle Royale National Park on June 3, 2016. I was kayaking along the northeast shore. The water was calm. The weather was clear. I paddled 1 mile offshore. My kayak capsized. I don't know why. Maybe I hit submerged rock. Maybe the boat had structural failure. Maybe I lost balance. I was wearing a life vest. I should have been safe. But the water was 41 degrees. Lake Superior doesn't give up her dead. I tried to swim back to shore. I made it 200 yards. Hypothermia affected my muscles. I couldn't coordinate movement. I stopped swimming. Started floating. The vest kept me on surface. I was conscious for another 40 minutes. I watched the shore. I could see the beach. I could see the trees. I was so close. But I couldn't reach it. I died in sight of land. My body washed ashore 3 weeks later near Malone Bay. Cause of death, hypothermia. This is my voice. This is my story. This is how I died on Isle Royale. The pattern continued. Voice after voice. Name after name. Date after date. Each one describing their disappearance. Their final moments. Their death. All delivered in the same calm, synthesized tone. All following the same format. All ending the same way. This is my voice. This is my story. This is how I died on Isle Royale. I listened for 2 hours. Counted 12 different voices. 12 different deaths. 12 different stories. All from Isle Royale. All describing real events. Or what sounded like real events. I couldn't verify without checking records. Without cross-referencing names and dates against missing persons reports. Without confirming these weren't just elaborate hoaxes. But something about the voices felt true. Felt authentic. Felt like actual testimonies from actual victims. The details were too specific. Too accurate. Too intimate. These weren't fabrications. These were confessions. Admissions. Final statements from people who died alone in wilderness and somehow found a way to broadcast their deaths to anyone listening at 155.7 MHz after midnight on Isle Royale. I started documenting, recording the broadcasts, transcribing the names and dates, building a database, creating files. 12 voices, 12 stories, 12 deaths spanning 7 years. From 2016 to 2022. All on Isle Royale. All during visitor season. All matching the pattern of real disappearances. Over the next week, I verified. Cross-referenced each name against National Park Service missing persons databases. Against local news archives. Against search and rescue reports. Against death certificates when available. 11 of 12 matched perfectly. Richard Kovacs, real person. Disappeared August 17, 2019. Found dead September 2, 2019. Cause of death, exsanguination and hypothermia following fall into ravine. Location, Greenstone Ridge Trail, mile marker 23. Exact match to the broadcast. Amanda Paulson, real person. Disappeared June 3, 2016. Found dead June 24, 2016. Cause of death, hypothermia following kayak accident. Location, northeast shore, 1 mile offshore. Body recovered Malone Bay. Exact match. All 11 verified victims. All exact matches. Names, dates, circumstances, causes of death, locations. Everything the voices described matched official records perfectly. Impossibly. Like someone had access to confidential investigation files. Like someone knew details that weren't public. Like someone had been there when these people died. Like someone had witnessed deaths that occurred alone in wilderness where no one else should have been present. The 12th voice was different. Didn't match any record. I couldn't find a missing persons report. Couldn't find a news article. Couldn't find any evidence the person existed. The voice gave a name, Sarah Vickery. Gave a date, November 28, 2023. Gave a location, abandoned copper mine, South Sector. Gave a description of death, bleeding out in a mine shaft. It's very cold, but I can see your light. November 28th was last week. 5 days ago. And Sarah Vickery was a volunteer. Winter maintenance assistant. Part of the skeleton crew that stays on our Royal through closed season. She'd been reported missing 3 days ago. December 1st. Last seen November 28th, search efforts were ongoing. No body found. No evidence of what happened. Just gone. Vanished somewhere on 206 square miles of frozen island. And now she was on the frequency, describing her death. In present tense. I am bleeding out. Not I bled out. Present. Ongoing. Current. Like she was dying right now. Like the broadcast was live. Like I could still save her if I could find her. If I could locate the abandoned copper mine in South Sector. If I could reach her before I am dying became I died. I grabbed radio direction finding equipment. Portable receiver. Directional antenna. Signal strength meter. Tools for locating transmission sources. I waited until the next night. Until the frequency activated again. Until I could get a bearing on the signal. Until I could triangulate the source. Until I could find where the broadcast W. Coming from. December 11th, 1:23 a.m. South Sector approach. The signal was strongest in South Sector. Exactly where Sarah's voice said it would be. Near the abandoned copper mines. Isle Royale has dozens of old mining sites. Remnants from the late 1800s. When copper mining was the island's primary industry. Most shafts are sealed now. Collapsed. Dangerous. Off limits. But some remain accessible. Some can still be entered. Some still exist as black holes leading underground into island geology that predates human occupation. I followed the signal, using the directional finder, getting stronger readings as I approached, getting precise bearings, getting exact locations. The transmission was coming from underground, from inside one of the mines, from beneath the frozen surface of Isle Royale. I found the entrance. Old mine shaft. Vertical descent. Maybe 50 feet deep. Ladder still intact. Rusted but functional. I could climb down. Could enter. Could find the source. Could locate whoever, or whatever, was broadcasting the voices of the dead. I descended. Carefully. Testing each rung. Afraid the ladder would collapse. Afraid I'd fall. Afraid I'd become the 13th voice. My name is Jeff Carmody. I disappeared investigating a radio frequency on December 11, 2023. I fell down a mine shaft. Broke my neck. This is my voice. This is my story. This is how I died on Isle Royale. But the ladder held. I reached the bottom. Found myself in a horizontal tunnel. Old mining corridor. Supported by rotting timber. Walls showing pick marks from 19th century miners. Floor covered in debris and standing water. Cold. Damp. Dark except for my flashlight. silent except for water dripping somewhere distant. And then I saw light. Ahead. Around a bend. Artificial light. Electric light. Someone had power down here. Someone had equipment. Someone was operating. Currently. Now. In an abandoned mine 50 feet underground on an island that's supposed to be nearly empty. I approached cautiously. Following the light. Following the tunnel. Following the signal that my equipment confirmed was strongest ahead. Was directly ahead. Was coming from the light source. I turned the corner and found it. A room. Natural cave enlarged by mining. Maybe 15 feet across. And inside, equipment. Lots of equipment. Solar panels, somehow getting power despite being underground, probably with surface panels and cables running down. Battery banks. A shortwave radio transmitter. A laptop computer. A microphone. Speakers. Recording equipment. Audio processing software. Everything needed to broadcast. Everything needed to create the frequency. Everything needed to give voice to the dead. And sitting beside the equipment, a person. A man. Maybe 60 years old. Thin. Weathered. Long gray hair. Beard. Wearing heavy winter clothing. Sitting on a camping chair. Headphones on. Looking at the laptop screen. Speaking quietly into the microphone. His lips moving. His voice transmitting. His words becoming the broadcast I'd been hearing for the past week. My name is Sarah Vickery. I disappeared from Isle Royale National Park on November 28, 2023. I went to check on equipment in South Sector. I found an old mine entrance. I was curious. I wanted to explore. I climbed down. The ladder broke. I fell. I'm injured. Bleeding. I can't climb out. It's very cold. But I can see your light. He was creating the broadcasts. Speaking the words. Using text-to-speech software to synthesize the voices. Using the laptop to process audio. Using the transmitter to broadcast. Creating the frequency. Manufacturing the voices. Giving testimony to deaths that occurred or were occurring on Isle Royale. He noticed me. Looked up. Removed headphones. Didn't seem surprised. Didn't seem alarmed. Just looked at me with tired, sad eyes. Like he'd been expecting someone eventually. Like he'd known this moment would come. Like he was ready for it. You found me, he said quietly. I wondered how long it would take. Who are you? I asked. What is this? What are you doing? My name is Walter Gaines. I've been here for 5 years. Living in this mine. Broadcasting the voices. Giving voice to the dead. Giving testimony to the lost. Giving stories to people who died alone and were never heard. People the forest took. People the island claimed. People who deserve to be remembered. Sarah Vickery. Is she real? Is she actually dying in a mine shaft? No. Sarah is dead. Found her body 2 days ago. Not far from here. She fell into a different shaft. Broke her back. Died within hours. I recorded her last words. She was conscious. She could speak. She described what happened. I transcribed it. Synthesized it. Added it to the frequency. Gave her the voice she would have wanted. The testimony she would have given if anyone had been there to hear. You were there? You witnessed her death. I'm always there. I monitor search communications. I listen to ranger frequencies. I track search efforts. When someone goes missing, I find them. Before rescue does. Before anyone official arrives. I document their last moments. I record their testimony. I preserve their voice. Then I add them to the frequency. I give them immortality. I make sure they are heard. Even if they died alone. Even if no one was there. I was there. I listened. I recorded. I broadcast. That's disturbing. That's wrong. These were real people. Real deaths. You can't just record them and broadcast them like specimens. Like data points. Why not? They're dead. They don't care. But the living need to hear. Need to understand. Need to know what happened. Families deserve answers. The island deserves testimony. The dead deserve voice. I provide that. I give what the forest takes. You said you've been here 5 years. Why? What made you do this? His face changed. Became harder. More pained. More personal. My daughter, Emma Gaines. She disappeared on our Royal June 14, 2018. She was a research assistant, studying wolves. She went into the backcountry, never returned. Search lasted 2 weeks. Found nothing. No body. No evidence. No closure. She just vanished. Taken by the island. Taken by the forest. Taken without testimony. Without voice. Without story. I'm sorry, but that doesn't justify. I stayed. After the search ended. After everyone else left. I stayed. I searched. I looked for her. For 5 years. I've been searching. And while searching, I found others. Found the body searchers missed. Found the dead who were abandoned. Found the lost who were forgotten. And I gave them what Emma never had. I gave them voice. I gave them story. I gave them broadcast. I made sure they were heard. The laptop, I said, looking at the screen. It's running text-to-speech. You're not playing recordings. You're generating voices. Why? Because I can't use their real voices. Can't record actual last words. Most die alone. Most die without speaking. Most die without anyone to hear. So I create the voices. I write what they would have said. What they would have testified. What their last moments were. Based on evidence. Based on investigation. Based on understanding how they died. And I broadcast it. I give them the voice death took. I give them the testimony silence claimed. I give them immortality frequency. I looked at the equipment more carefully. Noticed something else. Small devices. Dozens of them. Scattered around the cave. Voice modules. Audio recorders. Transmitters. Small, portable, solar-powered. Designed to be hidden. Designed to be planted. Designed to broadcast from remote locations. You plant these, I said. You place them at death sites. At locations where people died. That's how the signal appears to come from different places. That's how you create the illusion the dead are speaking from where they fell. Not illusion. Truth. I place the modules where they died. Where they gave their last breath. Where the island claimed them. The modules broadcast locally. Create the testimony at the source. Make the location speak. Make the earth remember. Make the island acknowledge what it took. This is insane. This is violation. Of the dead. Of their privacy. Of their families. You can't just decide to broadcast people's deaths without permission. Without consent. Without. The dead can't consent. They're gone. And the families? They want answers. They want closure. They want to know. The frequency gives them that. Gives them what official reports never provide. Gives them real testimony. Real understanding. Real voice. I'm providing a service. I'm creating memorial. I'm preserving memory. You're creating horror. People listening to synthesized voices describing deaths. That's not memorial. That's nightmare. Maybe. But nightmares remember. Nightmares testify. Nightmares preserve. Better nightmare than nothing. Better horror than silence. Better broadcast than forgotten. I looked at the laptop screen. Saw the interface. Text-to-speech software. Audio processing. Broadcast scheduler. And a document. Open. Showing transcript. Sarah Vickery's testimony. The words Walter had been speaking. The voice I'd heard on the frequency. And beneath Sarah's entry, another one. Being written. Currently. In real time. New testimony. New voice. New death. The document showed, my name is Jeff Carmody. I disappeared investigating a radio frequency on December 11, 2023. You're writing my death, I said. You're preparing my testimony. Contingency. In case you don't leave. In case you interfere. In case you become problem. I've survived 5 years here. I'm prepared for complications. Prepared for witnesses. Prepared for people who discover the frequency and try to stop it. You're not the first. But you might be the first who matters. Who actually understands. Who might help instead of stop. Help? Help with what? Finding Emma. I still search. Every day. 5 years. I've covered most of the island. But 206 square miles is vast. And winter makes searching difficult. Impossible in some areas. I need help. Need another searcher. Need someone who understands the island. Who knows the territory. Who has access to official search records. Who can help me find my daughter. Who can help me give her voice. Who can help me complete the frequency. You want me to help you find your daughter's body so you can broadcast her death? Yes. So I can give her testimony. So I can preserve her voice. So I can make sure she's heard. So she's not silent. So she's not forgotten. So she's part of the frequency. So she's remembered forever. That's all I want. That's all I've wanted for 5 years. Just voice. Just testimony. Just broadcast. Just Emma speaking. Just Emma heard. Just Emma remembered. I stared at him. At this man who'd spent 5 years in a mine. Broadcasting the dead. Creating voices for the voiceless. Preserving testimony for the forgotten. All because his daughter vanished and he couldn't accept the silence. Couldn't accept the not knowing. Couldn't accept that she died without voice. Without story. Without being heard. This has to stop, I said. The broadcasts. The frequency. The violations. This isn't memorial. This isn't preservation. This is obsession. This is sickness. This is wrong. Wrong by whose standard? The living? The comfortable? The people who weren't taken? I'm giving voice to the dead. I'm the only one who cares enough to listen. To document. To broadcast. Without me, they're silent. Forever. With me, they're heard. Forever. That's not wrong. That's necessary. That's moral. That's right. I'm shutting down the transmitter. I'm disabling the equipment. I'm ending the frequency. You can try. But the frequency is more than this equipment. More than this mine. More than this location. I have modules planted across the island. Dozens of them. Each broadcasting locally. Each preserving testimony. Each creating voice. You can disable this transmitter. But the frequency continues. The dead continue speaking. The testimony continues broadcasting. You can't stop it. You can only join it. I'm leaving. I'm reporting this. I'm sending authorities. They'll shut down everything. They'll remove the modules. They'll end this. Good luck. Most modules are in inaccessible areas. Most are hidden. Most can only be found by someone who knows where people died. Where bodies fell. Where the island claimed victims. Without my knowledge, authorities will find maybe 20%. The rest will broadcast forever. Solar-powered. Self-maintaining. Eternal. The dead will speak. The frequency will continue. The testimony will broadcast. With or without me. With or without you. The voices persist. I didn't respond. Just turned. Walked away. Back through the tunnel. Back to the ladder. Back to the surface. Back to the world above ground. Back to warmth and light and the living. Away from Walter Gaines and his frequency and his dead daughter and his obsession with giving voice to silence. I climbed up. Emerged into cold December night. Breathed fresh air. Felt wind. Felt alive. Felt grateful to be above ground. To be breathing. To be not broadcasting. To be not dead. I went back to the dispatch office. Filed a report. Described the mine. Described the equipment. Described Walter Gaines. Described the frequency. Requested intervention. Requested shutdown. Requested removal of all broadcast equipment and voice modules. Authorities responded within days. Sent a team. Entered the mine. Found the equipment. Found Walter Gaines. Removed him. Removed the transmitter. Removed the laptop. Removed the solar panels. Removed everything. Walter was evaluated. Psychiatrically assessed. Determined to be non-dangerous but delusional. Suffering from complicated grief. From obsession. From 5 years of isolation and loss and inability to accept his daughter's death. He was relocated to mainland Michigan. Placed in assisted living facility. Given therapy. Given medication. Given structure. Given help. January 8, 2024, 12:34 a.m. Dispatch Office. I was doing routine frequency sweeps. Standard protocol. Checking all assigned channels. Making sure no one needed assistance. Boring work. Familiar work. Comfortable work after the chaos of discovering Walter and the frequency and the voices of the dead. Then I hit a new frequency. 157.4 megahertz. Different from 155.7. Different channel. Different location on the spectrum. But active. Broadcasting. After midnight. Just like before. And I heard a voice. Synthesized. Calm. Emotionless. Familiar pattern. Familiar format. Familiar horror. Jeff. Thank you for listening. That's all. No name. No date. No description of death. No testimony. No story. Just acknowledgement. Just gratitude. Just 5 words repeated. Over and over. Every 30 seconds. Like a loop. Like automated broadcast. Like message left by someone who wanted me to know. Wanted me to hear. Wanted me to understand. Walter was in Michigan. In assisted living. Under supervision. He couldn't be broadcasting. Couldn't have access to equipment. Couldn't have created new frequency. Couldn't have planted new modules. Couldn't have set up new transmitter. He was gone. The frequency was ended. The broadcasts were terminated. But someone was transmitting. Someone was broadcasting. Someone was sending my name across the airwaves after midnight on our Royal. Someone who knew I'd been listening. Who knew I'd discovered Walter. Who knew I'd shut down the original frequency. Who wanted to thank me. Or threaten me. Or acknowledge me. Or claim me. I tried to triangulate the signal. Used direction-finding equipment. Got bearings. Got readings. Got location. The transmission was coming from North Sector. Different area from Walter's mine. Different part of the island. Somewhere remote. Somewhere I'd need to hike to. Somewhere I'd need to investigate to understand. But I didn't go. Didn't investigate. Didn't search for the source. Because I knew what I'd find. Another mine. Another cave. Another transmitter. Another laptop. Another person. Or another module left by Walter before his removal. Another piece of the frequency. Another voice. Another testimony. Another broadcast that wouldn't stop. That couldn't stop. That was designed to persist. To continue. To outlast intervention. To outlast shutdown. To outlast everything. Jeff. Thank you for listening. The voice knows my name. Knows I listen. Knows I found Walter. Knows I tried to stop the frequency. And it's thanking me. Not threatening. Not warning. Thanking. Like discovering the frequency was good. Like shutting down the transmitter was appreciated. Like my intervention completed something. Made something possible. Allowed something to proceed. I don't know what that means. Don't know what I enabled. Don't know what my investigation accomplished beyond removing Walter from his 5-year vigil. Don't know if shutting down one frequency just activated another. Don't know if the voices migrate. Don't know if the dead find new channels when old ones close. Don't know if testimony persists beyond shutdown, beyond removal, beyond silencing. All I know is the frequency exists. Still, again, always, broadcasting after midnight, carrying voices, carrying names, carrying gratitude, carrying acknowledgement, carrying message specifically for me, for Jeff Carmody, for the night dispatcher who listened, who investigated, who discovered, who tried to stop, who maybe, unknowingly, unwillingly, unintentionally, helped. I still monitor radios, still do frequency sweeps, still check all assigned channels. But now I avoid 157.4 megahertz. Skip right past it. Don't linger. Don't listen. Don't engage. Because hearing my name broadcast by synthesized voice after midnight makes me understand something Walter knew. Something he tried to tell me. Something about the frequency. It's not about the dead. It's about the living. About the listeners. About the people who hear. About the witnesses who acknowledge. About the observers who document. About the dispatchers who monitor frequencies and discover broadcasts and investigate sources and try to understand. We're not stopping anything. We're participating. We're enabling. We're becoming part of the frequency, part of the testimony, part of the voices, not as dead, but as audience, as witnesses, as the people who hear, who listen, who acknowledge, who make the broadcasts matter, who give the voices meaning, who complete the circuit between dead and living, between silence and sound, between forgotten and remembered. Walter spent 5 years broadcasting the dead, but he was really broadcasting to the living, to people like me, to listeners, to witnesses, to anyone who tuned to 155.7 megahertz after midnight and hear testimony, hear voices, hear the dead speaking, and in hearing, would acknowledge, would witness, would remember, would become part of the frequency themselves. And now I am part of it, named in broadcasts, acknowledged in testimony, included in the frequency, not as dead person describing death, but as living person described by the broadcast, as listener who became listened to, as observer who became observed, as investigator who became subject. Jeff, thank you for listening. 5 words, repeated endlessly, broadcasting to everyone on our royal with a radio, broadcasting specifically to me, thanking me, acknowledging me, claiming me, making me part of the frequency, part of the testimony, part of the voices that speak after midnight, part of the broadcast that never ends. I could report it, could request another shutdown, could send authorities to North Sector, could disable this frequency like I disabled the last, could silence this voice like Walter's voices were silenced. But I won't, because I understand now. The frequency doesn't end, can't end, won't end. It migrates, adapts, continues, finds new channels, new methods, new voices, new listeners, new witnesses, new participants. It's self-sustaining, self-perpetuating, self-replicating. Like Walter said, the voices persist, the testimony continues, the broadcast is eternal, and I'm part of it now, named, acknowledged, claimed, whether I want to be or not, whether I continue listening or not, whether I investigate or ignore. I'm in the frequency, part of the testimony, part of the broadcast that carries voices of the dead to ears of the living on our royal after midnight when rational people sleep and only dispatchers and obsessed fathers and synthesized voices remain awake. The radio frequency only works at night, after midnight, when darkness makes listening easier, when isolation makes attention sharper, when silence makes any sound significant, when the boundary between living and dead feels thinner, when voices can cross, when testimony can broadcast, when the dead can speak to the living, when Jeff Carmody can hear his name in synthesized voice thanking him for listening to the voices of people who died alone in wilderness and were given testimony by a grieving father who couldn't accept his daughter's silence. 155.7 megahertz is silent now, shut down, terminated, ended, but 157.4 megahertz broadcasts, carries my name, carries gratitude, carries acknowledgement, and somewhere else, some other frequency, some other channel, some other part of the radio spectrum, other voices wait, other testimony prepares, other broadcasts queue, other modules activate. Other transmitters power up. Other frequencies go live after midnight when listeners are few and witnesses are rare and acknowledgement is precious. The dead speak. The living listen. The frequency connects them. And once you're named in a broadcast, once you're acknowledged in testimony, once you're claimed by the frequency, you can't unhear it. Can't unbecome it. Can't stop being part of it. You're in the frequency. Part of the voices. Part of the broadcast. Part of the testimony. Forever. Jeff. Thank you for listening. I hear it every night. After midnight. On 157.4 megahertz. 5 words. My name. My acknowledgement. My claim. My participation in the frequency that only works at night. That only broadcasts to those who listen. That only testifies to those who witness. That only remembers through those who acknowledge. The frequency exists. Will always exist. We'll find new channels when old ones close. We'll find new listeners when old ones stop. We'll find new voices when testimony runs out. We'll continue. We'll persist. We'll broadcast. Forever. And I'm part of it now. Listening. Witnessing. Acknowledging. Completing the circuit. Being thanked for my participation. Being named for my service. Being claimed for my attention. The radio frequency only works at night. But night comes every day. And after midnight, the voices speak. The dead testify. The frequency broadcasts. And Jeff Carmody listens. Always. Forever. Because once you're named in the broadcast, you can't stop listening. Can't stop being part of it. Can't stop completing the circuit between the voices and the void. Between the testimony and the silence. Between the dead and the forgotten. Thank you for listening. The frequency appreciates your attention. The voices acknowledge your witness. The broadcast includes you now. Forever. In testimony. In voice. In frequency that only works at night when the living sleep and the dead speak, and dispatchers named Jeff listen and understand they are no longer observers but participants. No longer witnesses but subjects. No longer listeners but listened to. Jeff. Thank you for listening. I am. I always am. I always will be. Because that's what the frequency does. It listens. It witnesses. It remembers. And it makes sure others listen too. Makes sure others witness. Makes sure others remember. By naming them. By thanking them. By claiming them. By making them part of the broadcast. Part of the testimony. Part of the voices that speak after midnight on frequencies that only work at night on islands where the dead outnumber the living and the forest takes more than it gives, and the radio carries voices of the taken to ears of the takers who listen and witness and acknowledge and complete the circuit and become part of the frequency. Forever. Listen. The voices speak. Witness. The testimony broadcasts. Acknowledge. The frequency continues. And if you're named, if you hear your name in synthesized voice thanking you for listening, you're claimed. You're part of it. You're in the frequency. Forever. Just like me. Just like Walter. Just like everyone who listens after midnight and hears more than static. Hears voices. Hears testimony. Hears the dead speaking through frequencies that only work at night when the boundary is thin and the broadcast is possible, and the living can hear the dead and the dead can thank the living for listening. For witnessing. For acknowledging. For completing the circuit. For being part of the frequency. Forever. Jeff. Thank you for listening. You're welcome. I'm still here. Still listening. Still part of the broadcast. Still completing the circuit. Still being thanked. Still being named. Still being claimed. The frequency only works at night. But night always comes. And the broadcast never ends. And the voices always speak. And listeners always become listened to. And witnesses always become witnessed. And the frequency always continues. Always persists. Always claims. Always thanks. Thank you for listening. I know you are. I can hear it. Can feel it. Can sense it. The frequency knows. The broadcast acknowledges. The voices appreciate. Your attention. Your witness. Your participation. You're part of it now too. Just like me. Just like everyone who reads this. Who hears this. Who understands this. You're in the frequency. Named. Claimed. Thanked. Forever. Thank you for listening.
That was the story for today. I hope you enjoyed it and that it stayed with you in the best chilling way possible. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you. Your time and support truly mean more than you know. This channel is growing because of listeners like you. If you want more real and disturbing encounters like this, please consider subscribing. It really helps the channel continue bringing these stories to life. And if this story gave you chills, let me know in the comments. I read them all, and your thoughts make this community stronger. Until next time, turn off the lights, double-check the room, and I'll see you in the next story.